Welcome, my dear Bintagers, to the Binteger podcast, the Binteger podcast. My name is Binyam. I'm your host. This is episode number 3. This week, I am devoting time to exploring the prerequisites of integrity. So glad you could join. The prerequisites of integrity. The first one I'm beginning with this week, the one that I think is at the very top, and as I propose my list for you all, I would love to hear from you all what your thoughts are as well, in what you would include, what you wouldn't include, what you thought of the order that I put the list in. So this is very subjective. This is just from my experience and my pursuit of living with integrity. But number one on my list, the number one prerequisite that we're going to explore is what I am saying is hope. Hope for integrity. And I'm putting this at the very top because in my evolution, here is what came to the very forefront when I made that decision some years back. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that experience and some of the components that went into it. So glad you could be here. As always, however, on this podcast, we begin with our practice or discipline of doing a feelings check. And like I said in past episodes, this is an important practice that I want to share with you because it fosters and enhances one's pursuit of living with integrity, especially by way of when we are learning to be honest with ourselves. Honest with ourselves and knowing what's really going on internally and in a zone that many of us have struggled with. Maybe you're still struggling, but I know I struggled for such a long time in knowing how to describe what's going on inside because I'd never been given that permission. I never felt it was safe to actually describe what was going on. And for many of us, we've just learned over a lifetime to protect our heart, to protect the vulnerable side of ourselves because we don't want to get hurt. And so we lose frame of reference with how we're feeling and describing what that's like and giving it space to breathe, to exist, to have its influence, really. And so that's why we do a feelings check-in. I'm using a feelings wheel. You can look up on the internet for your own version of a feelings wheel. It's just a wheel that categorizes all the various emotions, but gives you such a broad range of emotions to be able to be more specific in what you're choosing to describe where you're feeling in that moment. And so that's what I'm doing here at the beginning. I would love to invite you to do the same, even as I'm doing so, as a way of learning more about you and where you're at in this moment and how to be able to give that legitimacy to it. So in this moment, I am feeling, a little bit, how can I say, I had my staff work party yesterday and I had some good conversations along the way, but there were some difficult conversations I had with one of my coworkers who works with me, and I was just endeavoring to encourage this individual because of our commitment also in friendship. And so there was a lot of love invested there, a lot of love invested in that hard conversation while I said some hard things to this individual and called them and challenged them to step up in the area that we were navigating. And so today, as a result of that, I'm feeling hopeful that this individual is going to be able to take those hard words that we had in our conversation and apply them well. And I'm also feeling a little bit, like invested in how can I say, like embodied maybe, not protective because I don't want to be his protector. I just want to see him in the flow, really, to step into where he could really be and seeing who he was made to be. And so I'm just feeling, I'm not exhausted. That gave me lots of energy, but I'm very expectant and hopeful that is going to go well for him, that conversation and what ensued afterwards. And so that's been on my mind all day today. And I've been feeling the sense of not weight, but like hope for him, which is the very topic that we're talking about in our podcast today. I really appreciate being able to experience the feelings, the broad range of feelings, There are many feelings that are uncomfortable, that some of us struggle with. Things like feeling humiliated, or maybe anxious, or isolated, or exhausted, heartbroken. Like so many of those range of emotions on that side of the spectrum that we've learned to sort of say these are bad emotions, and we try to avoid those. And I'm in a season of life now where I want to legitimize the whole broad range, because as human beings, we have this beautiful array of emotions to be able to help us navigate through all the different scenarios and situations in which we approach and experience in life. And I think all of those are really they're really important for us to be able to step into and experience and express in appropriate ways. And I think it's a very healthy thing as well. So that's where I'm at feelings wise today. I hope you had a chance also to reflect on your side, what is going on for you emotionally. And I think it's a beautiful thing that, like I say, continues to enhance our integrity, not with others first and foremost, but with ourselves first, because I believe that's where it starts. And so that's where we get to the topic that we are exploring today in the prerequisites for integrity. The prerequisites for integrity, number one, I would say, is hope. And this is a critical starting place for me. I have three sort of subsets that we're going to talk and explore about as we look at hope and its place in helping one get to and pursuing integrity. And for me, hope started with a tremendous awareness of a deep dissatisfaction. So if I could use just one word, I'd say it's dissatisfaction. But dissatisfaction with what in general? You remember from our episode in number 2, today's episode number 3, but in episode number 2, I shared with you my definition for integrity. And I said there was 4 parts to it with 2 progressions. The 4 parts are, integrity for me is where one's internal values match or align with their external actions. That's the first progression, while they're being true to themselves and respectful of others around them. So internal values that align with their external actions, while they're being true to themselves or honest with themselves and respectful of those around them. So that's like the 4 parts that I look at in my definition of integrity. And so the first prerequisite was hope. It's a deep dissatisfaction or awareness of the discord that most of us face when we look at our internal values that we espouse or hold internally, and the ways that we're acting. And there's usually a huge discord. We might believe something so strongly but fail to follow through. We might think that, for example, it's really important to be honest while we are being dishonest in so many ways in our lives, right? That's like an example, for instance. And that discord, that break there, like where there's no alignment, that's, I think, where my journey started in pursuing integrity and seeing and acknowledging and being aware of this huge disjunct, this huge gap between my internal values and my external actions, and how they just did not align. They didn't match up. And I got to the point, I saw it for quite some time and I was okay and I was fine living with that discord. But there's a point that I got to where I said, I really can't stand this anymore. This is not good. I don't want to see this discord between my values that I hold and my actions that I'm doing. I'm not happy with this. And that sense of dissatisfaction, that deep dissatisfaction, just eventually got to this place where I said, enough. I can't take this anymore. I can't live with this anymore. And I want to see change here. And so it's almost like that feeling when you've hit the last straw and you're like, no more. We're not going to tolerate any more on this front here. That deep dissatisfaction is, I believe, the initial seed, that seed that's starting to sprout that says, there's got to be something more. And that's why I started with hope. And then secondly, following the deep dissatisfaction is this longing for that alignment. You're seeing this disalignment, this lack of alignment in your values and your actions. And now you're saying, I want to see those two coming together in a beautiful cohesion. You want to see this being this fracture being repaired, in essence. And so you've got this deep longing for alignment in your life. You want to see the values that you really care about matching the actions in which you're living day to day by on a consistent basis. And so you start having high expectations of what could be. You're starting to say, I want something more than I'm presently experiencing. I have this deep dissatisfaction and I have this following longing for what could be and seeing this come together again. And you have this desire for the very change that you have not yet experienced. You're not even there yet, but you're starting to see what could be, and you're starting to be aware of what needs to happen in seeing those values being aligned now with your actions and doing the hard work of starting to realign the neural network in your mind to say, why do I do the opposite of what I believe in, for example? So this is like the beginning here of how I came to commit myself to walking with integrity. This is like, for me, and it's not like I planned this from the outset, but in hindsight, as I've been breaking it down and like analyzing it, this is sort of the progression that I came across. And that's why I want to share with you, should you be in that space where you're like, I would love to live with integrity, but I don't know how to do that yet per se, you know? And so this is how my journey initiated. The third and final part of this first prerequisite of hope for integrity is believing that it's possible. This deep desire to believe that it's possible. Like you want to see this so badly for yourself, and you're like, I believe I can actually get there. I think I have what it takes now that I'm being aware of what's involved here, like that discord and that desire for alignment in that discord, that it's possible for me to actually come eventually to a place. Now, let me just tell you up front, dear Bintegers, this does not happen right off the bat. This does not happen instantaneously. This is going to be a process, perhaps most likely over years, but this is the beginning point. This beginning point where you're saying, I have a deep hope that this is possible for me to become a person of integrity, to become one who is living with integrity, to be one who is whole. Remember, we touched on that in our initial episode where we said that the root word for integrity is the word integer, which is a mathematical term for a whole number, which means just like a number without any parts. It's not broken up, right? We're not talking about like 1.675 or pi, which is 3.16, et cetera, et cetera. We're talking about one whole number, which is 2 or 5, and the idea of what does it mean for us to be whole as individuals, like a whole number, the integer. That's what it means to walk with integrity. You're believing that it's possible that you could be whole, that your internal values could be whole and well matched with the way that you consistently act and engage your world around you. And that's what we're believing at the very heart of it is possible. And that's why I'm describing as best as I can, my dear fellow Bintegers, that you too can experience and walk with integrity. But in my perspective, I think it starts with this hope that it's possible. In essence, what we're doing here, dear Bintegers, is we are doing a magician's feat here of pulling something out of nothing. You know, when a magician, for example, reaches into his hat, which seems empty, and he pulls out like a rabbit or flowers or whatever, and you're like, how did that happen? Or he materializes something and it's all like illusion. This is not illusion. We're doing a magician's act here where we're pulling something out of nothing, whereby this discord that you're presently experiencing and deeply dissatisfied with and wanting to see that aligned, we're going to be talking about something by way of hope that this is possible. And in time, you're going to start seeing something coming out of nothing as you apply yourself with the hard work to aligning your actions with your values. And this is when you start living on purpose. This is when you start experiencing that sense of, wow, I'm doing this on purpose for a reason in the way that we're embarking and going forward. That is what I'm hoping you get to this point where you start experiencing how beautiful this is. And so once again, just to recap, the first in a series this week, on this third episode of the prerequisites of integrity, I'm starting with hope. Tomorrow we're going to move on to the second one, which in my perspective is honesty. But for now, we've just covered hope. I hope you find this has been illuminating and that in some ways you've been able to resonate with and say, ooh, something of what you're saying there is really hitting home and I want a piece of that. And so I hope that has been encouraging and inspiring for you. I would love to hear your thoughts. Like always, I want you to participate in this conversation. Share with me some of your insights, some of your thoughts on what would be really helpful when you're trying to think of what are the prerequisites that I would include when I talk about integrity in general. I would love to hear some of those. Thank you again for joining me on this episode of the Bintegers podcast. My name is Binyam. I can't wait to see you on the next episode. Thanks again for joining. I'll talk to you all soon. Bye for now.